This is Wraith from Wraith Rain. I'm an author of serialized gay romance fiction. Every week on this podcast, I'll be reading a chapter from one of my gay fantasy shifter serials called Dragon's Reign. I'll explain at the break how you can find out more about this story and others I write. So let's get to it. Chapter 115. Wounds. Raziel is here? Landry boggled. Caden slowly turned in a circle. Come on, Raziel. Give another shout so I can know exactly where you are. You want to know where the black dragon is? Ross squeaked. Absolutely. Because if I can find Raziel, I can tell it where we are, and Raziel will tell Valerius, Caden explained. And Valerius will be able to get us out of here? Landry asked. No idea, but it's a start, Caden told her. There was another roar. It came from the top of a mountain peak. The perfect place for a lair. Caden grinned. He gestured for the others to follow after him. This way. Raziel is up at the top of the peak, Caden cried, and started to jog along the edge of the crater. We're not seriously going towards the roaring, are we? Harvey asked, even as he jogged behind Caden. Yep, Caden told him. He blanched but kept following. Caden glanced over his shoulder. People were streaming out of the trees and running after him, some cautiously, others without any trace of hesitation. Even Jasper Hawes decided he didn't want to be left behind. Huffing a little, Landry asked, Well, Raziel know it's you? Caden blinked. Of course, it's seen me. I look like me. I mean, yeah, for sure. He honestly hadn't even thought of that as a potential problem. He didn't think of it as much of one now. He did look like himself. Raziel might be surprised to see him in the spirit realm, but Raziel was sure to know he and Iolaire were already in trouble. It'll be fine, he assured Landry. She just nodded, likely too out of breath to speak. Landry was not a terribly physical person. He still seemed to have his own shifter stamina, even though he couldn't feel or hear Iolaire. A trill of fear went through him at the remembered realization of that. But he pushed it down, used it to fuel his steps, and didn't let it overwhelm him. Panicking has never done anyone any good, he reminded himself. The base of the mountain was farther away than it had looked. Before they were halfway there, most of the group was too out of steam to run any longer. They walked swiftly, but some were even flagging at that. Caden kept looking back at them, alarm in his eyes. Maybe I shouldn't have had everybody come with us, Caden said to a sagging, breathless Landry. They wouldn't have stayed back, she gasped out. I just don't like us all being out in the open like this, Caden admitted. He kept looking down into the crater as much as he looked back at the people. He didn't know why, but he kept expecting to see the behemoth there. Would there be a white dragon head mixed in with all the rest? He swallowed sickly. If that had happened, what could he do? The behemoth could crush him. He wouldn't even have Iolaire's powers against it. Could spirits die? He was afraid he might find out. There! Look! One of the people behind him cried. Caden skidded to a halt and spun around. The person who had shouted was a middle-aged man. Caden could imagine him working as a lawyer, a banker, or an accountant, some boring yet safe desk job. He was dressed in a suit, though the tie was undone and the top few buttons of his shirt were open, as if someone had grabbed him by the neck. He was pointing to the right towards a hulking figure that stood about 50 feet away. Werewolf, Caden breathed, and he felt a chill run through him. It stood over 8 feet tall. The head was massive, with a set of jaws on it that likely could shear a person's head off and crunch it down in one bite. Everyone was frozen. There were horrified looks on faces. People were covering their mouths, trying to hold back screams. Eyes were huge in their heads. They were all completely out in the open. This thing could be amongst them in seconds, ripping open bellies with its claws, cleaving heads from necks, and pulling off limbs like they were dead branches. This is bad, Caden murmured. Yeah, what do we do? Landry whispered. Maybe it will just go away, Ross suggested. The werewolf lifted its snout into the air and sniffed the breeze. It let out a sound There was somewhere between a moan and a howl. I don't think so, Ross, Caden answered faintly. So what do we do? Landry repeated with more anxiety. Caden's head jerked back towards the base of Raziel's mountain lair, over 100 yards away, maybe give or take. Obviously, the lair was at the top. He doubted that they could make it all the way up before the werewolf was among them. He doubted that most of them could even make it to the base of the mountain before that happened. Not unless the werewolf is distracted, Caden realized. He was still relatively fresh. Maybe he could lead it away from the rest of the people, give them a chance to get to the mountain where, at least, even if they couldn't reach Raziel's lair, there might be places to hide. There certainly wasn't in this plain. Okay, here's what's going to happen. Caden licked his lips. I'm going to distract the werewolf, and you all are going to run like hell for the mountain. That's insane. That's not a plan. That's suicide, Landry hissed. I think it sounds pretty good, Ross muttered. Landry hit his arm. Why are you such a coward and a bad person? Ross rubbed his arm and said, I'm not. It's just Caden's like a dragon shifter while we're not. He can't get hurt, right? We don't know that. Landry shook her head. I can tell that you don't have your powers, Caden. You're human like us. Caden swallowed. He didn't have his powers. He couldn't contact Iolair. He had no idea if spirits could be hurt. Landry, we don't really have many other options here. I'm not sure what powers I still have, or if just being a spirit is enough to protect me. You don't know that. Her eyes were huge with worry. So huge he could see them behind her two long bangs. I think the time for talking is over. Harvey pointed towards the werewolf, which had fixated on a young woman at the edge of the group. She was breathing heavily and was going to have difficulty running to the mountain, but now it looked like the werewolf was going to run after her. Her face went pale as milk, and her eyes bugged out of her head as the werewolf took one large step, and then another large step towards her. She let out a thin wail. People started to back away from her, as if they were offering her to the werewolf. Take her and leave me alone is what they're thinking, Caden realized. The girl looked right, then left. She saw that a circle of space was opening around her. She was no longer protected by the pack. The werewolf's massive jaws opened. Rows of serrated teeth showed. Saliva rolled down the sharp white teeth and dripped off of the jaws, forming pools on the stony ground. I need you to get everyone to run when I tell you to, Caden said to Landry and her brothers. Don't hesitate. Just run, all right? What about when we all get to the mountain and the werewolf kills you and we're still stuck here? She asked him. You'll get to the lair where Raziel will roast us and eat us, she objected. Caden, without you, this plan to talk to Raziel doesn't work, so you can't sacrifice yourself. Raziel will recognize you, Landry. It's seen you when it was in the store, remember? Caden reminded her. It won't kill you. Not at first anyways, he thought, but did not say. You're not a threat to Raziel, so Raziel will listen to you. And what do you think Raziel will do when we tell it that you died for us? She asked. I'm not going to die. I'm a spirit. Spirits are immortal, right? He accidentally made that sound more of a question than a statement. You didn't die of hunger or thirst here, Landry, and you would have if that was possible, so I'll be safe from this werewolf. You don't know that. You shouldn't chance it, she said. I can't just let that girl. She's humans first, Ross muttered. She wouldn't care if you died. Trust me. You shouldn't waste your time on her. Yeah, if you heard the 10th of the stuff she says. Harvey shrugged his shoulders. She's not your friend, man. She's not even your ally. The same could be said about the two of you, Landry yelled at them. And me, too. God, guys, can't you see that we're all just a big bunch of hypocrites? Not Caden, but the rest of us. He's not just saving her to save her, but to save us. Guys, I'm trying to save all of you. It doesn't matter what you've said or done. I'm doing this because I have the best chance of succeeding, Caden told them. We can debate the merits of saving people later. Speaking of the merits of saving people, Landry growled and tipped her head towards Jasper Hawes, who was moving around the outer edge of the group farthest from the werewolf. He always takes care of himself, Ross said with a touch of something. Not disgust exactly, but it was mixed with a little admiration, as if he wished he could be that selfish. He keeps walking without watching where he's going. He'll fall into the crater, and I'm not saving him in there, Caden remarked as Jasper's right foot nearly slipped off the edge, and only by flailing his arms did he stop himself from falling. All right, I have to go. Caden, I don't want to leave you alone. Landry, please do this for me. Please, he begged her. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw her nod miserably. She was a good friend. She'd made a mistake. She'd wanted to be special, be a shifter. He got that. He understood it. But she'd been duped and had allowed the behemoth to use her. But he could forgive her for that. He knew that she would never make such a bad decision again. Ready? Caden whispered. He saw them nod. Run! Everybody, run for the mountain! And everybody but Caden and the girl ran. I hope you're enjoying Dragon's Reign so far. Many more adventures await our dragon shifter couple, but not until the next episode. If you're looking for another story full of hot heroes, romance, and magic set in an alternative world, check out the first book of my series, Cinders and Ashes. Cinders and Ashes is an elaborate gay retelling of Cinderella, but it's so much more than that. It's set in a world with forbidden magic, an heir made to work as a servant at his own estate, hidden heritage, enchanted wolves, and a king who wishes to marry for love. A link to book 1 is in the description below. The girl had dropped down to her haunches. She brought up her arms over her head as if that would protect her from the claws and the teeth of the werewolf. They wouldn't. Caden could easily imagine them being ripped off, just as easily as the wings of a fly by a naughty child. The werewolf watched the human prey run away, the powerful muscles in its calves bunched and flexed, ready to send a burst of energy to its legs for it to dash after them. But it resisted the urge, as the girl was right there. And so was Caden. He approached with a steady stride, not showing fear, hands in the pockets of his jeans, meeting the werewolf's gaze levelly. Hey, Caden said to the girl, what's your name? She didn't answer him at first, terror having stolen her voice. Listen to me. Whoever you are, it's going to be okay, Caden told her. I'm a dragon shifter, remember? Or maybe you didn't know, but I'm the 9th dragon shifter. He had no idea whether that mattered here. Yeah, he'd been able to jog without effort, but he was thinking about that. Maybe it wasn't because he was still joined to Iolaire, but because he had perceived he shouldn't get tired, and so he hadn't. While the others had perceived they should get tired, and so they had. They remembered what their bodies were capable of. But here they had no bodies. They were spirits, so exhaustion and other physical limitations didn't really exist. So maybe that means that the werewolf isn't stronger than me, because he doesn't have a body, and I don't have a body. Instead of mano a mano, it's spirit-to-spirit combat, Caden thought. He didn't know, though, how powerful his spirit was in comparison to this werewolf spirit. But then again, Iolaire had chosen him. He and the dragon spirit were meant to bond. So he hoped that meant his spirit was pretty damn strong. Gina, she mumbled, not taking her arms down from her head. It's going to kill us. No, it's not, Gina, he told her confidently. We don't have bodies here. We're spirits. That means you can run without tiring. You can run as fast as the wind, maybe faster. Hell, you might be able to simply will yourself from where you are now to the base of the mountain. What? She whispered, and then let out a low moan as the werewolf took another step forward. No, I have asthma. It could have just raced towards her and had her in its claw in seconds, but the werewolf was watching them carefully. He was the unknown quantity. He was not acting like prey. Good, that's right. Be uncertain. Keep your damn distance, werewolf, Caden thought. Gina, you aren't in your body, he told her, emphasizing every word. You don't have asthma here. You are free of it. Her head turned slightly towards him, her lips parting in his words as if she wanted to believe him, but wasn't sure she could. When I bonded with my spirit, I thought I was the same as before. But let me tell you, I could rip a door off its hinges now with no sweat. I can run a marathon without breaking a sweat or even needing to catch my breath, he told her. The same is true here. When we bond with our spirits, our bodies change. When you're here without a body, you're free of all of its limitations just the same. He was now just a few feet from her, while the werewolf was twice the distance. He imagined himself as Indiana Jones and her as that golden idol's head that he was trying to replace, but instead of replacing the head with a bag of sand that weighed approximately the same, he was going to put himself in her place. He sauntered a few steps closer. The werewolf bared its fangs. "That's rude," Caden said to it, even as his stomach did a flip, and then tried to hide in his feet. "What are you doing?" Gina asked hoarsely. "You should run." "Actually, you're going to run, and I'm going to keep our friend here occupied until you get away with the others," Caden said. "I can't breathe," she wheezed. "You only think you can't breathe, remember? No body here, so no asthma," he repeated. "No body, no asthma?" she asked. "That's right. I want you to keep saying that to yourself. And when you're ready, you're going to run as fast as Usain Bolt to the mountain," he told her. She let out a soft laugh, which he was pleased to note had a lot less wheezing in it. "Okay." A pause and then, "You really think I can do this?" "I know you can, Gina. It's the power of the mind here, the power of the spirit," he reminded her. "Now, are you repeating that sentence in your head?" She nodded. The werewolf was only 10 feet away. Caden was even with Gina. "I'm going to step between you and the werewolf, Gina," he said calmly, not taking his eyes off the shaggy beast. "I need you to be ready to run. Are you ready to run?" "Yeah," she said. She'd brought her hands down to her sides. He saw her calf muscles flexing as she prepared to jump to her feet and race towards the mountain. Caden stepped between her and the werewolf. "Gina, now!" he cried. She leaped up and was like a blur running full out towards the mountain. The werewolf made a curious sound. She was supposed to be weak prey, not strong, not able to run so fast. But now she was gone. Only a dust trail remained to show her passing. Caden was alone with the werewolf. "Just you and me now," Caden murmured. The werewolf's head shot towards him. Angry, hungry eyes narrowed and more teeth were displayed. A full dental kit of terror. More saliva dripped from the powerful jaws. "Can you understand me?" Caden asked. Iolera and Raziel could understand English. Was it something they developed over time, or was it something that every spirit knew? Iolera hadn't talked at first, but it had seemed to understand what was going on. The werewolf opened its jaws and a low, guttural growl was emitted. It clenched its clawed hands, clicking the 1.5-inch claws together as it did so. If it did understand English, it didn't seem to want to communicate. "Okay, now I need to imitate Usain Bolt and lead this thing on a merry chase before I lose it and double back to the others." Before you could even finish that thought, the werewolf leaped. If Gina had been fast, the werewolf put her to shame. Kate had only a millisecond to realize what was happening before he was on his back. The werewolf's clawed hands pinned his shoulders to the dry, blasted ground. They drew blood as the claws entered his flesh like a knife would hot butter. The werewolf sneezed painfully, dug into his thighs. Saliva dripped down from its jaws and dripped on his face. "Oh, God, gross!" Caden shouted. Even in this terrible situation, the foul, thick gunk was enough to have him yell in disgust. He jerked upwards, and the werewolf was rocked off of him for a minute. "I'm stronger than it is," Caden realized in that split second. The werewolf seemed to smile down at him as it reasserted its dominance, seemingly, and prepared to enjoy devouring him one mouthful at a time. "Mind over matter. No body here to keep me down. I'm pure energy, as strong as I was with Iolaire. No, stronger," Caden told himself. The werewolf's foul breath gushed over his face and throat. It was leaning down to snuffle at the soft bits just underneath his chin. Caden wrenched his right arm out from underneath the werewolf's painful grasp. His right hand shot out, and he caught hold of the werewolf's throat instead. It let out a surprised whine. Caden dug his fingers into the furry, hot flesh there. His fingers broke through the skin, and hot blood was pouring down his arm and pooling on his chest. The werewolf tried to shake him off. It brought both clawed hands up in the air, preparing to rake his face, throat, and chest. Caden threw the werewolf bodily 30 feet from himself, and then jumped up. His hands flexed at his sides. His eyes narrowed. The werewolf was already getting to its feet, shaking its head as if to clear it, its hands rising to its injured neck. It glared at him. Caden smiled. "Come on, puppy, you want to play?" Caden asked, pretending to be a Larian in that moment. He wanted to intimidate, and the Green Dragon King could do that in spades. The werewolf's gaze became worried. It searched his face for fear. What it saw instead was an eagerness for combat. Caden advanced upon the werewolf, keeping that slightly deranged smile on his face. For a final effect, he licked his lips as he stared at the weeping wounds in the werewolf's neck. The werewolf turned on its heel and ran off into the woods far down the slope. It had decided that there must be easier prey than this insane human. Caden studied the green and silver vastness, making sure that the werewolf was not simply circling around to attack him from a blind spot. But there was no sign of the beast. Only the wind blew through the branches of the trees, but nothing else moved. Caden let out a shaky breath and lifted his arms to run his hands through sweaty hair. He winced as the wounds on his biceps let out a fresh gush of blood. He pulled down his shirt and saw that the wounds the werewolf had made were still there, though he willed them to close. They remained. He stared at them for long, long moments. Maybe spirits could die. I hope you're enjoying Dragon's Reign so far. Dragon's Reign is free for you to enjoy, but not free for us to make. There is a whole team working with me for audio editing, artwork, graphic design, and custom music. Most YouTube channels and podcasts have sponsors and take ads, but because of the kind of content we make, we can't run ads or get sponsors. Instead, we have other ways you can support me and the team behind this gay romance audiobook. One easy way is to buy or borrow my books from Amazon. They are all gay romance set in alternative worlds with vampires or shifters and other magical beings. You may not know that even if you borrow books with your Kindle Unlimited subscription at Amazon, they are free for you, but they still earn us money. The books are published under the name Ex Aritare, which actually means wraith in Romanian. And if you love audiobooks, you can get professionally narrated versions of every one of my books on audible.com. The link to my author page is in the description below, as well as to the first book of the series I think you'll really like. Thank you so much for your support. People like you enable me and the team to keep writing these stories of gay romance, magic, monsters, and true love, and producing this very fun podcast for everyone. Thank you.